And we welcome you all to the South Salem Library and to our exploration of the Lewisboro Historian Archive. I'm Maureen Cole, and I am the Lewisboro Town Historian, for those of you who don't recognize me. We'll be looking at and reading letters and ephemera from 1860 to 1912. Amazing how true some of the sentiments expressed so many years ago ring true today. 5 young folks from the Lewisboro Library's teen group and 2 senior members of the Lewisboro community will bring these pieces of paper alive for us this afternoon. We hope you will enjoy this look back through 160 years. Depending upon time limits, we will entertain questions after the readings. First up will be Ray Morse reading an 1860 letter from J.N. Crother, a Kentucky businessman. His letter was to Darius Weed Lawrence, a member of a prominent South Salem Lawrence family. Darius was a traveling man for the William Smith and Brown Boot and Shoe Company, based in New York City, of which his older brother DeWitt was one of the partners. This branch of the Lawrence family lived along the road to Cross River and built what is now the Tater home on Pound Ridge Road. And now we will hear from J.N. Crother, as read by Ray Morse.
Frankfort, Kentucky, 27th of November, 1860. My dear Mr. Lawrence, your communication extraordinary is at hand. It gives pleasure to know that you will be with us early in January. I hope nothing will prevent your coming. It may be that I will not be here at that time. The Union may be dissolved, and I appointed minister plenipotentiary from Kentucky to the court of Indiana. Things begin to look that way now. Why do you not get up some rousing union meetings and pass resolutions asking the northern states to nullify the fugitive slave law? Just a little improvement in the North now would do away with all this deviltry. But be it as it may, in Kentucky, we'll be the last to leave when all the states have dissolved and gone their way. I, J.N. Crother, will be seen standing in the middle of old Kentucky, bearing above my head the glorious stars and stripes, and crying with a loud voice, even the voice of a bull, to my countrymen. What shall I do for my country? Oh, my country, how she bleeds. Money is exceedingly scarce here now. Time's getting awful tight. What shall be done? It is hard to know what will be done. Old Fraser was in today and said he is afraid you are a damned abolitionist. I disabused his mind of the idea. With the highest regards, I remain yours truly, J.N. Crother.
The next 5 letters are from a collection of 24 letters written between April 1861 and June 1863 by a 21-year-old Joel Moses Boughton. Joel is something of a South Salem mystery because we don't know exactly where he fits into the Boughton family picture. But he obviously lived here prior to removing to upstate New York with his mother and his sister. He was an enterprising young man and worked at everything from a school teacher to a barrel maker during the pre-Civil War oil boom in upstate New York. His letters will take us from Olean, New York to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Joel details his life as a Civil War soldier, often in a humorous mood and always with an eye out for a fun time, as we hear in these letters to his good friend, Stephen Hoyt. The Hoyt farm was on Oskaleta and Old Oskaleta roads. It is now the home of Melinda and Bruce Cassio and the South Salem Auto Body. I shared Joel's letters with Professor Mark Dunkelman, an artist, writer, and professor at RISD. Professor Dunkelman included Joel's story in his book, pictured here. The book is about the 154th Regiment, nicknamed the Hardtack Regiment. Professor Dunkelman also painted the Gettysburg mural seen later in the program. First letter and third letters will be read by Ollie Pizon. The other letters will be read by Ian Paz and Zach Pizon. Please listen now to Ollie Pizon as Joel Moses Boughton.
Lee, New York, April 29th, 1861. Bully for you, Steve. If it was not for you, I do not know as I should hear from old Salem as all my old associates are out in that vicinity, have cut my acquaintance. So I find that you are a friend indeed, for you know the saying, a friend in need is a friend indeed. And I need you sadly, because if I could not hear from out that way, I don't know, but I should dry up and blow away. Maybe I would not like to come out there and see you some, and see you and the rest of the folks. I reckon we would have something of a time, don't you? I haven't got to coopering yet, but expect to get it at it next week, if nothing happens. It is very dull times around here as regards business, and that is the only thing that pays money. We have got lots of war excitement around here. Company E of the 64th Regiment have got all prepared to start, and they have got their tents pitched and are encamped in regular military style, up in the park, right in the center of the village, so that we have plenty of martial music and parading about these times. I tried to coax Mother into letting me volunteer, but she would not. She said that she wouldn't live till fall if I went, so I had to give it up. She had me up to the doorpost the other day to see if I was tall enough to go, and she said that I was not. So I expect I shall have to give up the idea of being a soldier just at present. Give my respects to your folks and all other friends, and accept the same for yourself. Please write soon and tell me all of the news. Yours in friendship, Joel M. Boughton.
Camp J.M. Brown, Jamestown, New York, September 2nd, 1862. I am not certain whether I wrote to you last or not, but I am sure of one thing, and that is that I am going to write to you now. Probably you have heard that I am a soldier of the U.S., which is the case, and I like it very much. I have been at the business for over a month now. Where we are camped now, it is nothing but play and do our duties, but we expect to leave here inside of a week or so to go to Washington, where I hope it will be cooler than it has been here for a past week. I have been promoted to the high rank of second corporal. I did expect to get orderly sergeant, and had the boys been allowed to vote for the officers, but the captain appointed them himself, and was quite partial, giving the best positions to the men from his own town. But I am satisfied, as my position clears me from doing picket duty, and is $2 more pay, besides a good chance for promotion. There are about 1,500 men in camp now. At first we were going to fill one regiment from the senatorial district, comprising of the districts of Cattaraugus and Chautauqua, but it was finally decided to raise a regiment from each county. We have about 700 from our own county mustered in, and expect enough this week to fill about a regiment. I suppose you have not thought of going, unless you were drafted, then perhaps you can get a substitute. But above all, don't go to Canada. We have 2 men in our company that tried to run away to Canada, but were arrested at Dunkirk and brought here. They were kept under guard for 2 weeks, when they were enlisted in our company. They are German and will make good soldiers, having been in 5 years in Germany. We have lots of fun here, all kinds. I tell you, more than you can find in any civil life. But it is well for soldiers that can enjoy themselves, as they are deprived of many of the luxuries and conveniences of home. It is time for Jill, and I must close. Please write soon so I can get it before we leave here and oblige. Yours truly, J.M. Boughton. My respects to your folks and all friends.
Camp near Fredericksburg, Virginia, January 7th, 1863. Friend Steve, various circumstances have intervened to prevent my answering your friendly letter sooner, the principal of which has been the moving of our tents and fixing up for winter quarters. We have laid out our camp on a grand scale, with very broad streets, and erected us some very comfortable tents. They are constructed of mud and logs, principally logs. With our tents for roofs, in one end we have splendid fireplaces made of stone, sticks, mud, and bricks, which not only furnish us with plenty of heat and light, but cook our provisions to perfection. The orders came yesterday that we were going to stay here 2 months, but we can't most always, sometimes, generally tell. For I heard a rumor today that Burnside is going to try and get a position on the other side of the river. Still, I do not place much credence in mere camp rumors. Maybe you unite with too many of the northern people in condemnation of Burnside and consider the Fredericksburg battle as one of the worst disasters of the war. But if you was here to see the position of the Reb and then take into consideration the force of public opinion that compelled him to fight, compare the number lost with the number engaged, I think that you, with me, will go in for giving Burnside another trial. We are encamped in sight of the Rebs and within range of their batteries. When it is clear, we can see them very distinctly lounging around their campfires. Their outpost picket line is on one side of the river and ours on the other, but there is not any firing between them. Our regiment went out on a picket a week ago Sunday, but shortly after our company was on the reserve, I did not see any of the rebels. Shortly after the battle, there was a considerable trading between our pickets and theirs, but that has been prohibited now. They would trade tobacco for sugar, salt, and coffee. On one occasion, upon a very cold night, one of our boys called out to the Reb opposite and said, "Pretty cold tonight." "Yes," said the Rev, "it's damn cold. I wish Jeff was on this side of the river and old Abe on that standing picket tonight. I think they would come to terms devilish quick." And another one told one of our boys that if it could be left to them to settle the thing, they would throw down their guns, shake hands, and go home. They said that they do not know what they wanted this war for. They were living well enough before it broke out and had no cause for complaint. Give my respects to your folks and all friends. With sincere regard for yourself, I remain now, as ever, your true friend, Joel M. Boughton.
Stafford, Virginia, May 18th, 1863. Friend Steve, thee hast no doubt been sorely grieved in thy heart of late to think that he, who when thou hadst thought thy friend, had been so negligent upon thy claims and thy kindness as writing to him as to not answer thy most welcome letter which came to hand full 3 weeks ago. But the facts are these. And it came to pass that upon the 13th day of spring, that our regiment, yea, even the 154th, left this place and took its way up to Kelly's Ford, which is more than a Sabbath day's journey, being about 25 miles up that renowned river, the ever wonderful Rappahannock. And moreover, when we arrived there, our leaders decreed that we should stay for a period of 2 weeks and do picket duty. This was faithfully performed. Our leaders, and upon the night of the 29th of the same month, even the second month of spring, we crossed the river of the 73rd Pennsylvania and guarded the opposite bank while a pontoon bridge was laid. But the enemy were few, even scattered as mullein stalks, and we were not molested by them. And it came to pass that about the 12th hour of the night the bridge was finished, and the hosts of Abraham, even Abraham the first, a mighty host, even as the trees of small woods, they continued as far until the next day, until the 11th, 12th, and 5th Corps and Stoneman's cavalry had all crossed. When we followed, they and rested upon the opposite bank until April 30th. While we lay here, we had fun jayhawking old Kelly, a rich secesh. Early this morning, we started as rear guard to the baggage train for Fredericksburg. We reached and crossed the Rapidan River at about 1 o'clock, where we had to wait about 4 hours for the train to cross, and then started again. Marched to within 10 miles of Fredericksburg, where we arrived at midnight, having marched about 22 miles with 8 days' rations and a good supply of clothing on our backs. We were in a very hard fight for about an hour, and taken at great disadvantage, but our boys fought their maiden battle well, and our brigade received all the praise that the 11th Corps got. When we retreated, you ought to have seen your humble servant run. About 6 or 8 rods behind me were a lot of the Rebs coming with fixed bayonets yelling, "Surrender, you Yankee son of a bitch." But I could not see the point, as they did not get this child, no, not they. I had the satisfaction of administering to them one of Uncle Sam's blue pills during the engagement, but it was mighty unpleasant to be chased by them. I was fortunate enough to escape without a scratch, although I had a very close call. But a miss is as good as a mile. Besides, a man that is born to be hung cannot be shot. But notwithstanding my good luck in battle, I have been shot, though not very seriously. Last Wednesday night while on picket duty, I got shot through the left foot by accidental discharge of a gun and have had to have one of my toes taken off, but it is getting along finely, and I guess I shall be able to go with old Joe when he again crosses the river, which I hope won't be delayed any longer than necessary for me to get all right. Give my best respects to all friends and remember to write soon. Your friend, J.M. Boughton. June 6th, 1863. Friend Steve, received your welcome letter and nothing has hindered me from answering it before this but laziness. We are having very fine weather and very pleasant times just at present. In fact, we have had scarcely any duty since the last fight. You seem to think that we did not accomplish much last time we crossed the river, but notwithstanding that, we did not gain all that was planned to, nor did all that the country was hoping for. Still, we inflicted upon the enemy one of the severest blows that they received since the commencement of the war. And two or three more like this will rise up the entire Reb army of Virginia. We were not driven along the river, for we had a position that could have held as long as we were a mind to, but our rations and ammunitions were running low, and the rapid rise of the river threatened to destroy our pontoons. So it was not considered policy to let an unbridged river come between our forces and supplies. But there is another move in progress, the nature of which I am unable to form any idea of, as it is one of the most mixed things I have ever tried to ferret out since the commencement of the campaign. Yesterday, firing commenced at about 3 o'clock at Fredericksburg, and was kept up very heavily until dark. This morning we have the report that we have taken the heights. We received orders yesterday to be ready to march at short notice and keep 3 days' cooked rations on hand. Since I commenced writing, firing has begun up the river, probably at Kelly's Ford. Something is in the wind. We have a very splendid camp here, the first we have had since we came into Virginia. It is a large oak woods where we have beautiful shade and some swings and gymnastical appliances. We have fortified our position all the way to Akia Creek, probably for the defense of our base supplies. Our division has put up 2 strong forts and some rifle pits, and they will only let us stay here if I fight these. I will be satisfied. I must quit now. It is about time for us to target shoot. They have commenced booming away to the north of us in the vicinity of the Dumfries. Tell Cy Fincher I would like to hear from him. My respects to all friends, yourself included. Please write soon. Where are the Fox boys? I have not heard from them in a great while. Your friend, Joel M. Boughton. This is Joel's final letter. He died on July 1st, 1863, the first day of the Battle of Gettysburg.
We will skip forward a few minutes for a few minutes to 1891 to another Civil War soldier's words. Ray Morris will read an untitled poem by his late wife Helen's uncle, her great-great-uncle, Ephraim Culver Crocker, a Civil War veteran. The poem appears to have been read at a Decoration Day. That's Memorial Day to us living in the 21st century. On May 30th, 1891. Probably the letter was read in Rensselaer, New York. So much of what Ephraim says is necessary for us to hear today. Listen carefully to this 7-stanza poem, especially the last few lines. And now Ray Morse as Ephraim Crocker.
How sentimental when men prate of Southern comrade, Southern friend, fraternal feeling, misguided state to make the Union spirit bend. For they were rebels when the North was true. They wore the gray, but we the blue. 4 weary years of life I've passed, in bivouac, on march, in fields. Can I forgive while Southern press upholds states' rights or slavery shields? That is rebellion. Who is true if they wear the gray and we the blue? Spread garlands rich on the grave of Wirtz. a martyr true in slavery's cause, erect for him a mausoleum grand, who violates our nation's laws. This for a rebel who crushed the blue, for he wore the gray when the North kept true. Give rebels back their bonny flags. Forget Fort Pillow's murderous day. Imperishable make the name of Booth, and rebel debts the North will help pay. For we were loyal and they untrue, for they wore the gray and we the blue. Can starving men forget their woes of hunger, cold, and prison left, of law unsatisfied, which says that treason's penalty is death? Vengeance is God's, he will repay. We wore the blue, they wore the gray. Had Lee or Davis ere stooped down to place the flowers where the honor rests, then I will give a comrade's hand and then forgive. May heaven bless. They lived, they died as traitors do, who wear the gray when we the blue. When shotgun principles are gone and law's firm hands each state shall rule, when colored man can reach the polls and where every colored child's at school, then North and South will both be true and none will speak of gray or blue. May 30th, 1891.
Before I go any further and introduce the next section, I just want people to take a look at the flag behind me. It was loaned to us for this occasion by Ron and Eileen Gleba, and it is the flag that was, it's a 35-star flag that waved during the time of the Civil War and Abraham Lincoln's time in office. So I wanted to just get that shout out to the Glebas and thank them very much for letting us enjoy their flag while we're doing this program. But now we will back up a few years for a look at troubles of a different sort. The next readings were found in the daybook of Cyrus Lawrence, who actually happens to be Darius's father, Darius of the first letter. Cyrus was a country lawyer, served as town supervisor for one term in 1840, which happens to be the year that South Salem became Lewisboro. He was town clerk for 3 terms and justice of the peace for 40 years. He was also a benefactor of the South Salem Library, hence this portrait that we have here in the library, unhung at this point. Cyrus was married 3 times and had 7 children. Louise, Darius's mother, died in childbirth. Ray Morris will portray Cyrus as an exasperated lawyer trying to make sense out of a divorce settlement between farmer Stephen Merritt and his wife Lucy Merritt. The year is 1877. As near as I can determine by census records, the Merritts lived near Cross River. Lyman Mead, mentioned in the argument, lived next door and was a shoemaker. A. Green, also heard in these arguments, probably lived in Golden's Bridge. Listen now as Ray Morris as Cyrus and Ann Testa as Lucy Merritt give it their best.
Notes just prior to April 9th, 1877. Stephen Merritt proposes that he give back to his wife 1 horse wagon and harness, woodwork of Harrow, 10 tin pans and whatnot, that all the movable property which is on her place, which she claims to own and sign off her right of dower in his place. Stephen Merritt will pay A. Green not to exceed $50 to release his claim on Steve's place. If in addition to the above named articles, he will return to her the ox wagon, entire pole and shafts, the yearling heifer, the harrow and tire, and the long ladder, she to give up the ox cart. April 9th, 1877. By request of Stephen Merritt, I called on him at his house this day for the purpose of agreeing on the terms of articles of separation between him and his wife, and to settle all matters of controversy between them. Among other things, he suggested that she ought to give up the Lyman Mead place and sell off enough of her stock to pay her debts, except A. Green's mortgage. I asked him how much the stock she owned. He said 11 cows, one 3-year-old, three 2-year-olds, three 1-year-old, one pair of stags, and with a note there, they're castrated oxen, one horse, and one fine sow. He said that he had given up all his claims in the stock that she had on her place, and that she thought she ought to pay the costs of the litigation between them at Pound Ridge, Katona, and South Salem. Also pay A. Green $50 to release Stephen's place from Green's mortgage. Also to sign off her right of dower in his place.
Mr. Lawrence, I am most desirous for a separation and settlement agreement from my husband, Stephen, and I will do everything reasonable and more to effect it. But I feel he is asking a great deal more than is right or reasonable, that all litigation has been commenced by him. I have acted on the defense to protect the right in my property, and I have been put to a great deal of trouble and expense thereby. It is not reasonable for me to have to pay costs that were taxed against him. I do not believe that I should sign off my right of dower without some serious consideration. That condition aside, if it is the most agreeable and expedient means of a settlement and separation, I will pay A. Green not to exceed $50 to release his mortgage on Steve's place.
She's pretty good.
After laboring nearly a day faithfully with first Steve and then with Mrs. Merritt, I gave up in despair and went home after about dark.
Diaries are another window into the past, giving us a view of everyday life and even some special times in our lives. Melissa Falco will read from Emily Virginia Haight's 1890 diary of a train ride that she took from Sacramento, California to New York City. The 15-year-old is returning to Katona after finishing her sophomore year at the Ellis College for Girls in Los Angeles. That is not actually a college, it was a finishing school. The Haight family farm is in the Mount Holly vicinity. From her other letters, we learn that Emily is an accomplished seamstress and often spent time at the home of her older sister, Allie, helping to care for Allie's children before Emily's own marriage. Here is Melissa Falco as young Emily Haight.
Diary of Emily Virginia Haight, Los Angeles, California, June 1890. June 28, 1890. Touring all day and had a very nice drive in Sacramento. 7 to 10 p.m. Went around the city a little. Started on the streetcar and the horses got stuck and the car driver whipped them and one fell down and the other trampled over it and I don't know whether it was killed or not. I wrote a note to Ivy, a postal card to Aunt and another to Gertrude Starkweather. Sat out on the platform until about 12 and then went in and sat up inside almost all the rest of the night. June 29th, 1890. Scenery is fine, a charming morning Sunday. It does not seem like it. How different from the east. The river on one side, the mountains on the other. How wonderful away out here in Nevada. Alone, yet not alone. We just stopped at Wadsworth, lots of Indians. I got some Indian pancakes. They are very nice. We just passed Humboldt. We stopped there 20 minutes for dinner. It is a most beautiful little place, lots of green grass and a beautiful fountain in which played the goldfish. We just passed Elko. Fine scenery all the way through here and has been all afternoon. I am in a genuine mess. Regular toppers. I am so shocked. They are eating their lunch, or rather their dinner, and wine, making wine mixed in. I am too full for utterance. My scorn is too deep. God sees us all. He knows and will take care of me in the future as he has done in the past. He knows what is best. Perhaps it is because I'm the experience. Perhaps, well, perhaps. All right, but we know it is all for the best. I wrote a postal to Uncle. June 30th, 1890. Was up all night. Went through Salt Lake City. Stopped 15 minutes for breakfast and changed cars at Ogden. Been having fine scenery all day past the castle gate in the coal mine. Mountains are all in manner of shapes like old castles and such things. July 1st, 1890. Have been having fine scenery all night and all day. The canyon of the Arkansas is grand. Superb. We were in the observation car early this morning. We went through the Black Canyon of the Gunnison, and last evening the scenery was fine. Castle Gate in the moonlight. It has been the moonlight all the way ever since we started. We changed cars at Denver. It is a beautiful place there. We stopped there an hour and a quarter, but as it was 8:15 when we reached there, we could not go around much. July 2nd, 1890. Everything is very, very charming. I have just begun to realize that I'm going home. The country is just grand. I am so happy. We stopped at Oxford for breakfast, a beautiful little place. We stopped at Lincoln for dinner. Mr. Owens and Miss Lyra Buer leave us at Omaha. Mr. Owens left his pencil with me. This afternoon, while Miss Dunn, Miss Root, and Miss Orman were out to dinner, someone took their seats and one would not get out when they came back, and the conductor and Mr. Porter finally got them out. It was as good as a circus. But the scenery is fine, so simple and yet so grand. I feel so gay and fine. July 3rd, 1890. This morning, Miss Overman and Miss Roth left us. We reached Chicago at 8:15. We were transferred to another station, then we went out to Lincoln Park and Michigan Avenue. It was fine. Went to get our tickets and found I could not go to Albany without a big fuss about changing, so I go to New York, then up home. Sent a telegraph home. July 4th, 1890. Crossed the Detroit River early this morning. A follow-up letter explaining final hours of her trip home to Mount Holly. Katona, New York, July 11th, 1890. Dear girls, someone spoke about me writing a letter, so I thought I would try and do it. I arrived in New York Saturday morning, July 5th, almost 8:30. Papa was there to meet me, but I did not see him, so I came home alone. I took a carriage from the station over to the house. Ida May is the only one who has changed.
As we turn toward the 20th century, we find that even farmers can fall in love. Ollie Pizzone will read a very poignant letter dated August 1899. It is from a broken-hearted George Linus Hoyt to the above diarist, Emily Height. Both are 24 years old at the time. George Linus Hoyt is the son of Stephen Hoyt, recipient of the Boughton letters that you heard earlier. Spoiler alert, the couple was married 1 year later in September 1900. George and Emily had 3 children. Dudley, who began the auto shop business in a barn on the family farm. Alethea served for many years as a secretary at the townhouse and also as a desk clerk here at the South Salem Library, as it was known then. And the third child was Millicent. Millicent moved away from town. So now we're going to hear Ollie Pizzone as the lovelorn George Hoyt.
South Salem, New York, August 7th, 1899, Sunday evening. My dear Emma, feeling that I should explain myself, I therefore write you this note. You may think it strange that I did not go over to your house after church tonight. Doubtless, you will think it was only my meanness. I think I have good reason for doing as I did. When you go to church with another fellow, I think that is enough. If your sister wanted me to come over to the house, she could have asked me. If you wanted me to come over to the house, you could have asked me and not said that your sister wanted me to come over. Haven't I said that I wouldn't be dictated to by anyone? I noticed that the plans are still working to have your sister's cast taken away. I like to see a person with a will and desire of their own, and not always do as someone else says. I noticed you can have just as good times with other fellows as you can have with me. You can go with Dave Mead one day, and with Walter Lawrence another, and with Jeremy Lane, and be just as happy as you can be with me. You will do just the same things for them as you would do for me, if they would only tease you for them. If I ask you what you think, you say that you don't know. I hope that you will live to know someday what you want and what you don't want. I am sorry that I have made you so many things that you do not wish to do. I have thought that you have loved me, but I have found it is only until you can find someone better. If you can find a fellow with more brains or money, you would not care a snap about me. Now, dearest friend, I hate to scold, but I cannot help it sometimes. I hope you will forgive me, if it is possible. I love you still. I love you dearly. I cannot bear to think that this will end our pleasant moments together. But if it should be so, I shall still remember you in my prayers, asking God to bestow blessing upon you. God knows what is best for you and me. Trust him. He will give us wisdom to do only what is right. When you do not know what to do, get down on your knees and ask God. He will show you the way. Though the way seems dark and dreary at times, the clouds will roll away, and there will be sunshine for you and me someday. Emily, dear, I want to ask you one thing, and that is, will you pray for me? I am wicked and sinful every day of my life. Will you please pray God to give me strength and power to resist temptation and wicked thoughts? May God bless you. I am ever your true and loving friend.
From love and marriage to the loss of a job, we will turn to Golden's Bridge now. Aunt Testa will read the 1899 appeal of a distraught school teacher, Charlotte M. Toby, who was fired from her position at the Golden's Bridge one-room schoolhouse after just 1 week on the job. She is giving testimony to the New York State Department of Education, challenging her dismissal by sole school trustee Silas D. Gregory. Little is known about Charlotte, and she disappears into history, obviously not in Golden's Bridge. Let's listen to what Charlotte has to say in her defense. And here is Aunt Testa.
On January 3rd, 1899, I was informed at the teachers' agency in New York City that a teacher was needed at the schoolhouse in Golden's Bridge to teach algebra and bookkeeping and aid the children with their music at a salary of $10 a week. I immediately took a train to Golden's Bridge and met with trustee Silas D. Gregory. I explained that I had an academic diploma and a first grade license and have taken a partial course at a state normal school. I agreed to teach bookkeeping, but was not too sure about music. Mr. Gregory said I might as well have the school now that I was there, and that he wished the school to begin on Monday, January 9th, and I was to be employed for 17 weeks. I had wished to be hired for a complete rest of the term, 25 weeks. I showed Mr. Gregory one testimonial and offered to give him additional references and show him my license, which was then in my trunk at the boarding house. I know what kind of teacher I am, and I proposed to teach for 1 month. Well, Mr. Gregory checked on my testimonials. This he agreed to do. Mr. Gregory called on me at my boarding house in Katona on January 7th. I showed him my license and 2 testimonials, and he said he was perfectly satisfied with them, and I would teach the whole term. Then, on Friday, January 13th, about 2:45 p.m., Mr. Gregory burst into the schoolhouse and informed the students that there would be no school on Monday. Then Mr. Gregory said, I had not given satisfaction. I will pay you $10 for the week, he said. I replied that I expected to be paid for the month agreed upon. Unfortunately, there were no witnesses and no contract or agreement in writing. I feel that Mr. Gregory has not acted in good faith, so I am appealing this dismissal. However, I think I am better off free of that school anyway. The scholars had no respect for me, talked saucy to me, and would not mind. And besides, I do not like to teach school anyway.
Our last offering will be the valedictorian speech given by Constance Hunt of Wakaba. She was a graduate of Mount Kisco High School, class of 1912. Constance made some amazing remarks as she looked to the country's future 100 years hence. Constance was a member of the Meade family. In fact, she was a 4 times great-granddaughter of Solomon Meade, the original pastor of the South Salem Presbyterian Church. Constance graduated from Oberlin College and Pot School in Tacoma for a few years. She never married, and she lived all her life in the second house on the left as you enter Meade Street from Route 35. The house was built by her father, Frank Hunt, in 1892. Constance was a pillar of the South Salem Presbyterian Church and was known most by the 1930 Model A Ford that she drove for 43 years and over 100,000 miles. She sold the car in 1973 for $1,200 and donated the money to the church for the rebuilding fund after that devastating fire in 1973. Listen carefully to Isabella Ferragina as she reads Constance prediction for 2012.
Looking back over a century to the year 1812, we see the United States, a small republic of only 18 states and less than 6 million inhabitants. We see James Madison acting as president, assisted by Henry Clay, John C. Calhoun, and many others to solve the problems of state and devoted their lives to the advancement and rising greatness of their country. The people of 1812 know nothing of electricity, of telegraphy, and few were even familiar with the simplest forms of the steam engine. How surprised these people of 100 years ago would have been if they could have taken a journey across the continent on one of our 20th century express trains through the large and flourishing cities of the Great West. If they could have made a trip to Europe in less than a week, in the midst of luxury and comfort beyond their wildest dreams, on one of our huge ocean liners, the splendors of the Arabian Nights would have seemed pale in comparison. What excitement an automobile would have caused in the streets of New York or Philadelphia, and on a dark night, how its penetrating lights would have driven the people into their homes in terror. But how shall we, who enjoy so many pleasures and advantages, appear to the people of the next century? In imagination, I see a large aeroplane hovering over Mount Kisco in the year 2012, ready to start on a short pleasure trip. We see rows of tall buildings and stately mansions which comprise a very small part of New York, now the largest city in the world. As we fly over miles and miles and miles of the vast city, we meet millions of airplanes and see as many more above and below us, each in its own circuit. Trolleys have long been a thing of the past, and even automobiles are seldom seen. The entire city is without a trace of dirt, for the air is no longer darkened by smoke from the factories, since all machinery is run by electricity generated miles away, and the streets are cleaned by means of a powerful current which draws dirt beneath the pavement far into the earth. The metropolis is illuminated by radium, and electric lights are used only in a few remote places. There are immense aeroplane stations, 80 or 100 stories high, from which one may easily go to all parts of the world. A trip to Europe takes only a couple of days, and perhaps the most interesting of these airships are those which go to Mars. One of the most prominent women of the day has been elected President of the United States. The world increases in area with continual exploration, yet distance seems to decrease with the rapid progress in wireless telegraphy. No longer are the nations weakened by war, no longer do colonies struggle against the mother country, for the whole world is awakening to the thought of universal peace. The times are changing and the world moves on, and we must cast aside all prejudice, maintain an open and receptive frame of mind for all that comes, and be ready when the old order changes for the new.
I want to thank you all for listening as we revisited these folks from the past in their own words. And I want to thank all our readers. They did a wonderful job. Consider how much has changed in 160 years and how much remains the same and what still needs changing. We wish you all wonderful holidays and peaceful gatherings, whether they be in person or by reaching out to touch loved ones, as the old telephone commercial used to say, never envisioning our 2020 lives via Zoom. And on behalf of Dolores Antonez and myself, thanks to all our readers one more time, and a special thanks go out to our technical director, Liz Gabriel. And I don't know if anybody has any comments or questions. If you do, we can try to answer them. Or if you're all ready to go home or to leave the screen and have a cup of tea, that's fine too. Thanks again.